Imagine standing on the cold stone steps of a fortress, the crowd silent, their eyes fixed on you as if your life depended on their judgment. You know your fate is sealed. The axe awaits, yet you take each step forward with a calm smile, every heartbeat echoing defiance. This is a story of a queen who faced death with serenity that would haunt history, leaving behind a legacy far beyond her crown that eye in the turbulent courts of 16th century Europe. Power was both a privilege and a perilous trap. Queens were expected to embody grace, wisdom, and loyalty, yet even the highest-born women could find themselves at the mercy of politics, betrayal, and ambition. Our story begins in a kingdom where alliances were fragile, and a single misstep could mean imprisonment, disgrace, or death. Royalty was a gilded cage, glittering on the outside, yet cold and inescapable within. The queen at the center of this tale was no stranger to such dangers. She had grown up in a world where her every action was scrutinized, where whispers in corridors could topple reigns, and where even family members sometimes plotted in the shadows. Her intelligence, charm, and poise had carried her through early court intrigues, yet they could not shield her from the storm that awaited. What made her story extraordinary was not merely the political forces aligned against her, but her response to them. History often remembers rulers for victories or defeats, but few are remembered for the courage displayed in the face of inevitable death. She had been accused of crimes that were as much about perception as reality. The charges were serious: treason, betrayal, perhaps even conspiracy, but whether true or fabricated, they marked her for the ultimate punishment. Even as the machinery of her execution was set into motion, she remained calm, studying her surroundings with a clarity that unnerved those around her. Courtiers and guards alike reported her composure, a smile lingering on her lips as if she were walking into a private ceremony rather than a public execution. Her story offers more than historical drama. It is a window into human resilience, the psychology of fear, and the strange serenity that can accompany acceptance. Scholars have debated why she behaved as she did, and modern psychologists suggest that her calm was a combination of preparation, detachment, and profound understanding of the fleeting nature of power and life. Some historians argue it was an act of defiance, a final assertion of control in a situation designed to strip her of it. Others see in her smile a quiet lesson about dignity, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, one can choose how to face the end. In this story, we will explore every step leading to that fateful day, the tensions that surrounded her, and the people whose ambitions intersected tragically with hers. By understanding her world, we can grasp not only the fragility of power, but also the remarkable strength of a woman who met death with a calm that still echoes across centuries. Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoy dark history stories like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your thoughts. Your feedback means a lot. The day began with an unnatural quiet that seemed to stretch across the castle, a silence heavy enough to press against the chest of anyone daring to breathe, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath in anticipation of what was to come. The queen, who had been woken before dawn, dressed herself in the finest silk of her wardrobe, not in a desperate plea for mercy, but in a deliberate affirmation of her dignity. Each movement was measured, precise, almost ritualistic, a silent conversation with herself that no one else could understand. She fastened the laces of her gown, the cool metal of her brooch catching the dim morning light, and for a moment allowed her mind to wander to memories that were both comforting and cruelly distant. Her childhood in sunlit gardens, the first time she rode a horse, the laughter of children who had long since grown up and scattered. Those memories were a shield, a private sanctuary she carried with her even as the instruments of a public demise were prepared elsewhere in the fortress. Guards moved like shadows around the corridors, whispering among themselves, their unease palpable, sensing that history itself was unfolding before their eyes in a way that no training could have prepared them for. The queen's attendants, those who had not yet been dismissed, attempted small gestures of comfort, a touch on the arm, a whispered word of reassurance, but she shook her head ever so slightly, conveying that no human intervention could alter the course of the day, that her mind was already beyond the reach of fear or pleading. Word had spread quickly through the castle of the charges leveled against her, accusations of plotting against the king, of alliances with foreign powers, of acts that were deemed treasonous in the sharpest possible terms. Whether these allegations were grounded in fact or were the product of envy, political expedience, or fear, it mattered little in the face of an execution order that could not be rescinded. The court physician, an older man whose hands had tended to wounds both of body and reputation, stood quietly nearby, offering a gaze that conveyed respect and sorrow. He had seen rulers fall, had administered tonics and bandages to those who had survived plots and duels, yet even he felt the weight of inevitability pressing on him as he looked at the woman who remained composed with an almost supernatural calm. Outside, the crowd began to gather, a sea of muted anticipation, the air filled with the murmurs of nobles and commoners alike, their voices trembling with a mixture of curiosity, fear, and the strange fascination humans hold for the downfall of those in power. The queen, aware of the eyes upon her even before she emerged into the open courtyard, allowed herself a quiet examination of the assembly, noting familiar faces, those who had once praised her intelligence and charm, now watching with suspicion, judgment, or morbid expectation. Each step she took toward the hall where execution would occur was deliberate, echoing against stone walls, a rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the silent pulse of the crowd. Her cortege, though outwardly composed, struggled with conflicting emotions, loyalty battling survival instinct, grief intertwined with a need to appear unaffected. And yet, she moved forward, unbroken, as though each measured pace was a silent assertion of autonomy, a refusal to grant the spectacle of a death the satisfaction of witnessing fear. The executioner, a man whose trade was sharpened steel and the quiet administration of endings, prepared his tools with the meticulous care of someone who had performed the same grim duties countless times, yet even he could not ignore the peculiar serenity radiating from his intended victim. The queen's gaze occasionally flicked to him, not with fear, but with profound awareness of the inevitable, a recognition that death was a destination she could not avoid, yet one she could meet with choice, dignity, and a defiant grace. As the final preparations concluded and the gates of the courtyard opened, a hush descended, a momentary suspension of time, as if the universe itself had paused to bear witness. The queen's steps became deliberate statements, each movement a silent message to those who would remember that even in the face of ultimate powerlessness, one could control the narrative of their final moments. Onlookers strained to catch glimpses of her expression, searching for fear, for hesitation, for any sign of weakness, yet all they found was composure, a smile that neither mocked nor pleaded, a serene confrontation with mortality that unsettled even the most hardened observers. The wind shifted slightly, carrying whispers of distant forests and forgotten songs, as though nature itself acknowledged the solemnity of the moment. Cortes attempted discreet gestures of reassurance, hands brushing lightly against haze, murmured words lost beneath a collective intake of breath from the gathered crowd. She acknowledged none of it, focused solely on the path ahead, the steps leading to a platform where the past and future converged in the most definitive and irreversible manner. Every footfall resonated with the weight of centuries of monarchy, the echoes of history that had seen countless rulers rise and fall, yet few faced their end with such deliberate tranquility. As she reached the execution site, the assembly noticed her posture, upright and unyielding, shoulders squared, head held high, a portrait of calm in a scene designed to terrorize. The executioner stepped forward, the shadow of his presence long and deliberate, the axe glinting ominously in the filtered light. Yet even this did not provoke fear. Instead, her eyes met those of the assembled dignitaries and citizens alike, a silent message passing through the gaze, that life, regardless of its brevity, could be met with courage, even when the outcome was preordained. Historians later described her smile as enigmatic, some suggesting it was an act of defiance, others a serene acceptance, and still others a complex blend of both. But whatever the interpretation, it left an indelible mark on all who witnessed it. This was a queen fully aware of the machinery of death around her, yet unwilling to surrender the last fragments of self-possession that belonged solely to her. The crowd shifted, some leaning forward, others retreating slightly, a collective anticipation hanging in the air as if the very moment of finality had stretched into eternity. And then, as the executioner positioned himself, as the murmurs dwindled to silence, the queen lifted her chin, allowed a slow, measured breath, and walked forward into history, her smile not merely a gesture but a statement, a refusal to be diminished, a final act of agency in a world determined to strip her of it, and an enduring testament to the human capacity to confront the inevitable with courage, grace, and an almost unfathomable serenity. The air around the execution site seemed to thrum with anticipation, a low vibration that traveled through the crowd and into the very stones beneath the queen's feet, as if the fortress itself were aware that it was witnessing something extraordinary, a convergence of fate and defiance unlike any it had previously observed. Her steps, deliberate and unhurried, carried her across the polished courtyard, each echo a heartbeat in the collective tension that gripped the onlookers. Soldiers, tasked with maintaining order, found their hands trembling ever so slightly, not with fear for themselves, but the unusual courage radiating from a woman who was moments away from death. Courtiers whispered among themselves, some questioning whether such composure was possible, while others speculated on the psychology behind it, offering theories ranging from stoic training to spiritual resignation. The Queen's eyes, steady and unwavering, scanned the assembly with a subtle intelligence, noting faces both familiar and foreign, allies who had faltered under the weight of political intrigue, and adversaries who now believed victory was theirs, though unknowingly they were being witness to a triumph of a different sort, one of spirit over circumstance. She passed her attendants with barely a nod, her focus fixed on the platform ahead, the final stage where centuries of lineage, power, and ambition would culminate. Her mind, however, was not lost in fear but in reflection, a catalogue of moments that had led to this point, the decisions made, the alliances forged and broken, the subtle betrayals that had brought her to this precise intersection of history and mortality. Every memory carried a weight, yet none could crush the calm she had cultivated over years of political navigation, of understanding that in the volatile landscape of monarchy, control was often an illusion, and the ultimate surrender might be the only genuine assertion of autonomy left to a ruler who had lost everything else. Behind her, the murmur of the crowd swelled and then softened, a rhythm that seemed to echo the pulse of her own blood, steady, unyielding, as if her body itself were communicating with her mind in a silent pact of courage. The executioner adjusted his grip on the axe, the blade sharp and gleaming, a cool instrument that had ended countless lives, yet even he could not suppress a fleeting respect for the poise before him. It was a strange, almost sacred moment in which life's fragility was highlighted by the unshakable serenity of its impending loss. Observers would later describe a palpable tension, a liminal space between the present and eternity, where time seemed suspended and every subtle movement carried monumental significance. The Queen's gaze did not waver. Her lips, pressed lightly together, betrayed neither fear nor hesitation, only a quiet acknowledgment of the inevitability she faced. She stepped onto the raised platform with the fluidity of someone accustomed to ceremonial precision, yet each motion was deliberate, a silent assertion of agency in a scenario designed to erase choice. As she faced the assembly one last time, the shadows cast by the early sun accentuated the lines of her face, capturing a blend of dignity, defiance, and reflective serenity that would linger in the memories of those present for decades to come. Scholars analyzing contemporary accounts would later note the almost paradoxical effect her demeanor had on the crowd, a mix of awe, discomfort, and admiration, as if the very act of facing death with composure challenged the conventional narratives of fear and power. Her mind remained sharply engaged, noting the smallest details, the subtle shifts in posture of the onlookers, the exchange of glances between guards, the barely perceptible tightening of a noble's jaw, each observation a final exercise of authority over her perception of events. Though she could not alter the outcome, she could control how she was remembered in that moment, and she did so with a mastery that rivaled her political acumen in life. The executioner signaled to the assistants, and the ceremonial silence of the courtyard deepened, broken only by the occasional shuffle of feet or muffled gasp from a spectator. The Queen inhaled slowly, grounding herself in the present while simultaneously letting the inevitable unfold, her body and mind aligned in a seamless acceptance of mortality. Her smile, subtle but unwavering, communicated not arrogance but clarity, a recognition that the essence of power did not always reside in survival but could reside in the manner of one's departure, in the grace and intentionality with which one met the end. As the moment stretched, the crowd leaned forward, collectively holding its breath, captivated not by the spectacle of death, but by the display of human resilience that transcended circumstance. Commentators centuries later would describe this scene as emblematic of a rare psychological equilibrium, a state where fear and composure coexist without contradiction, and where dignity asserts itself in the most extreme conditions. The Queen's thoughts drifted briefly to those who had loved her, who had supported or betrayed her, and she allowed herself a fleeting internal farewell, unspoken but profound, a silent acknowledgment of the connections that defined her existence even as it approached termination. The executioner raised the axe with deliberate care, the metallic glint momentarily catching the light, a signal that the final act was imminent. Yet even at that precise juncture, the queen's demeanor did not falter. The poised calm she projected was almost hypnotic, a study in psychological mastery that left witnesses both unsettled and inspired. In that final convergence of life and death, her gaze, her smile, her very posture became the narrative, overriding the brutality of circumstance and rewriting the story of power, courage, and agency in a single, unforgettable moment. Each person present would carry the image forward, recounting it to future generations with a mixture of reverence and disbelief, a testament to the extraordinary resilience of a human being who faced annihilation with intention, control, and an almost supernatural calm. As the executioners unsteadied and the platform seemed to shrink beneath the weight of history itself, the queen remained fully present, fully conscious, fully herself, a figure whose courage would echo far beyond the physical confines of the castle, whose final smile would become an enduring emblem of dignity in the face of mortal certainty, and whose story would remind every observer, present and future, that the measure of power often lies not in dominion over others, but in mastery over oneself. Even in the shadow of the inevitable day as the sun climbed higher, casting elongated shadows across the courtyard, the queen's presence seemed to command time itself, each second stretching, thick with tension, as though the universe had slowed to honor her final moments. The crowd, a mixture of nobles, soldiers, and commoners, collectively leaned forward, drawn not by the macabre allure of death, but by the quiet power radiating from a woman who refused to be diminished by circumstance. Even the guards, tasked with the solemn duty of enforcing the king's judgment, found themselves unsettled, caught between obligation and an almost magnetic respect for the composure she displayed. Her eyes scanned the assembly one last time, taking in familiar faces, faces that had once been allies, now tinged with fear or awe, and faces that had been enemies, whose triumph and her demise would be tempered, perhaps unconsciously, by recognition of her unyielding dignity. The platform beneath her feet felt both oppressive and strangely liberating, a paradoxical stage where mortality and agency converged, and where her every gesture became amplified in significance. She allowed herself a slow, deliberate breath, grounding herself in the present, the weight of impending finality balanced by the internal fortitude that had been honed over years of navigating a treacherous court. Memories flickered in her mind, moments of joy and sorrow, victories and humiliations, the smiles of those she loved and betrayal that had carved deep grooves into her soul, but none provoked fear. Instead, each recollection became a brushstroke in the portrait of a life that was about to end yet had been lived fully, intentionally, and with a consciousness that few could claim even in survival. The executioner adjusted his grip on the axe, the sharp edge reflecting the morning light in a way that seemed almost ceremonial, and still she did not flinch. Her smile remained subtle, a deliberate act of calm, an assertion that although she was powerless to alter the blade's descent, she retained absolute authority over her final expression, her final posture, her final act of communication with the world. Historians and psychologists alike have debated the meaning behind that smile. Some claim it was defiance, a final rebellion against the machinery of death. Others suggest it was serenity, an acceptance that transcended human fear. And yet others argue it was a calculated moment of performance, a demonstration to the living that dignity could survive even when life could not. Regardless of interpretation, the effect was immediate and profound. The crowd felt it, a shared shiver, a recognition that what they were witnessing was not mere spectacle, but a rare encounter with courage and intentionality in the face of ultimate vulnerability. Courtiers and attendants struggled to maintain composure, whispers of astonishment threading through their ranks, while the queen's attendants bowed their head discreetly, understanding that their role had shifted from serving life to bearing witness to history. The air was thick with anticipation, each heartbeat mirrored by the silent tension that had settled over the assembly like a tangible force. She thought briefly of the future that would unfold without her, the political machinations that would continue, the legacy that would be interpreted and reinterpreted by those left behind. Yet she allowed no regret to surface. Instead, her mind lingered on the principles she had embodied, the choices she had made, the courage she had cultivated over years of navigating treacherous waters, all culminating in this singular, unrepeatable moment. The executioner's assistant gave a subtle signal, the axe raised with a gravity that emphasized the irrevocable nature of what was about to occur, yet the queen's gaze did not falter. She met it with awareness, not fear, with acknowledgement, not despair. Her body remained calm, her breathing steady, her smile a faint curve, a quiet defiance, a serene acceptance, projected to everyone present, a silent declaration that while they could control the mechanics of a death, they could not claim her spirit, her composure, or the narrative of her final moments. Observers would later describe how that smile lingered in their memories, a paradoxical image of vulnerability and strength intertwined, a symbol of the human capacity to retain agency even when life is stripped away. In those final moments, she achieved a rare mastery over circumstance, an almost philosophical command of self in the shadow of mortality, demonstrating a truth that resonates across centuries, that courage is not the absence of fear, but a deliberate choice to face it with clarity, dignity, and intentionality. As the executioner's axe descended, history recorded not the mechanics of death, but the triumph of human resilience, the quiet victory of a queen who met the inevitable with a smile that would endure far longer than any crown, any throne, or any decree. That single, fleeting expression, captured in memory and chronicled in accounts both contemporary and modern, became a lesson in the transcendence of character over circumstance, a reminder that even in the most constrained and perilous conditions, one can choose a manner in which life, or death, is confronted. The Queen's story continues to be referenced in discussions of leadership, psychology, and human resilience, a testament to the profound impact of courage exercised in extremity. In the silence that followed the blade's descent, the resonance of her choice remained, lingering in the minds of all who witnessed it, echoing through time as a haunting, inspiring, and unforgettable demonstration of dignity in the face of annihilation. The crowd dispersed slowly, each person carrying a fragment of the moment with them, their retellings imbued with awe, reflection, and a sense of moral gravity that transcended the immediate political context. Scholars and storytellers would debate the nuances for centuries: why she smiled, what it symbolized, how one human could exercise such agency in the absolute absence of control over life itself. The answer, perhaps, is contained in the simplest truth of her presence, that even at the edge of oblivion, the human spirit retains a measure of sovereignty, a fragment of choice, a capacity to define its own narrative against the stark inevitability of fate. And so, the Queen who walked into her own execution smiling became not merely a historical figure, but a symbol, a reminder that courage, dignity, and composure are available to any person, regardless of circumstance, and that the manner in which we confront the end can leave an impact far more lasting than the details of the life that preceded it. Her story, observed, recorded, and remembered, endures as an extraordinary testament to human resilience, a narrative of defiance, serenity, and the quiet, profound power of choice in the shadow of mortality, an eternal lesson whispered across centuries to anyone willing to witness, reflect, and learn from the courage of one remarkable woman who faced death not with terror, but with a calm, deliberate smile that in the quiet aftermath of her death, the Queen's smile remained far more than fleeting expression. It became a symbol of human resilience, a testament to the capacity to meet the inevitable with grace, courage, and unwavering self-possession. Across the centuries, historians, psychologists, and storytellers have returned to that single moment, examining it from every angle, attempting to unravel the mystery of her calm. Was it defiance, acceptance, a final assertion of control, all of these at once? Perhaps the true power of a story lies not in answering the question, but in feeling the profound impact of a choice, to face the end fully aware, fully present, and fully herself. There is something hauntingly beautiful in the way she embraced mortality, refusing to let fear dictate her final act, demonstrating that dignity can transcend circumstance, and that even in the shadow of death, human agency can shine bright as her story teaches us about the strength found in preparation, reflection, and a quiet courage to remain true to oneself even when all external powers are arrayed against us. It reminds us that life, though fragile, offers moments of absolute sovereignty, choices that belong only to the individual, and that the manner in which we confront endings, personal, professional, or historical, can resonate far beyond the immediate consequences. The Queen's calm defiance challenges us to consider how we meet our own trials, how we face fear, and how we might hold on to dignity when control seems impossible. Her smile, so subtle yet so profound, carries a timeless message. Courage is not always loud, victory is not always political, and strength often shows itself in silence and poise. That if you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, like the video, and tell us in the comments what type of stories you'd like to see. Let us know which historical moments captivated you the most, and which figure's courage inspired you. Your engagement keeps the exploration of dark history alive, and together we can continue uncovering the remarkable, haunting, and unforgettable moments that shaped our past. The queen who walked into her execution smiling may have left this world, but her courage and her story live on, echoing in the hearts of anyone willing to witness, reflect, and learn from her extraordinary composure in the face of the inevitable.